Hello YouTubers, this is SHEM once again, and in this video we're gonna have a look at the brand new Nexus 5 and how it compares to the Sony Xperia Z1. So let's begin with the build quality of the Nexus 5. The back of the phone as well as the sides are covered by plastic, or actually bicarbonate. The back has a similar feeling to the original HTC Desire. The front of the phone is covered with Corning Gorilla Glass 3, so it should be completely scratch resistant. On the right hand side there is a power button, then on the bottom is a speaker grill, actually a double speaker grill, even though there's just one speaker, which I'll show you later. Then going further up you can see the volume rocker, and on the top we have a headphone jack. Coming to the Sony Xperia Z1, on the side of the phone we can see the micro SD card slot as well as the USB charging port. Then we have the pogo pins. On the bottom we have the speaker grill, and next on the right hand side we have the camera button and the volume rocker as well as the power button, and going further up is the SIM card slot. And then on the top we have the headphone jack. The front and back of the phone is covered with tempered glass, and the body of the phone is aluminum, so it's a premium handset, and it has its up and down sides. The back of the phone, because it's glass, catches fingerprints extremely easily, whereas the bicarbonate on the Nexus should stay relatively clean. When we compare the phones side by side, they're pretty much the same thickness. The Nexus 5 is 8.6 millimeters, whereas the Sony Xperia Z1 is only 8.5, so it's not noticeable at all. There is a massive difference when it comes to the weight. The Nexus 5 only weighs 130 grams, whereas the Sony Xperia Z1 is quite heavy for its class, as it weighs 170 grams. The Nexus 5 is also noticeably smaller. It's more than 6 millimeters shorter than the Sony Xperia Z1, and it's also narrower by 5 millimeters. And you can definitely feel the difference in your hand. When it comes to the spec sheet, both phones are covered by the same Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 chipset, which is clocked at 2.3 GHz when it comes to Nexus 5, and it's clocked at 2.2 GHz when it comes to the Sony Xperia Z1. The GPU on both phones is Adreno 330. Both phones have 2 GB of RAM and support LTE bands depending on the market. They'll be either American or European. The Xperia Z1 has a bigger battery, as it's a 3000 mAh battery, as compared to only 2300 on the Nexus 5. Where the Nexus 5 comes short is the micro SD card slot, which it doesn't have, so you're stuck with the memory that you're going to buy your phone in, so it's either 16 or 32 gigabytes. The Sony Xperia Z1 comes with 16 GB memory, which is expandable by another 64 GB with a micro SD card. The Nexus 5 also doesn't have the dedicated camera button, as well as an FM radio built in, so you won't be able to listen to FM radio on your phone. And also, it's not waterproof as the Sony Xperia Z1. One area where the Sony Xperia Z1 comes short is it has no wireless charging. But that is kind of compensated with the pogo pins, as you can buy a dedicated dock for the Xperia Z1. Still, for someone who wants wireless charging, Xperia Z1 does not have it, and the Nexus 5 does. Now, when it comes to the software, both phones run Android. The Nexus 5 runs the newest Android 4.4 KitKat, whereas the Sony Xperia Z1 is still 2 generations behind with its Android 4.2.2. When it comes to performance on both phones, it's as good as it gets. I didn't run any benchmark as there's no point. They're both real benchmark beasts, and they're gonna top any benchmark charts because they run the most powerful hardware out there at the moment. So you won't find any lags in either device, and they're very smooth. All apps launch very quickly. The one area where the newer Nexus 5 shines is because of the Android 4.4 KitKat. There's a new software feature called ART, and it's a runtime that replaces Dalvik, and you can actually set that in developer options on your Nexus 5, and that increases the opening speed of apps up to 50%. So users have already reported that this feature, which is still in beta, is really useful, and it will make our Android phones a lot faster. So there is the kind of feature that you'll have to wait for a long time to get it on your Sony Xperia Z1. When it comes to the display, both phones use 5-inch TFT displays. The LG Nexus 5 uses an IPS panel, whereas the Sony Xperia Z1 uses a VA panel, which has its triluminous and X-Reality engine technologies built in by Sony. Both phones have about the same brightness, and the outside visibility is very good. The color reproduction is also great, and you can't really tell the difference between the two devices. When it comes to the viewing angles, that's where the Sony Xperia Z1 falls short, as the viewing angles are really bad. As soon as you tilt the device a little bit to one side, the colors become washed out. And this is not the case on the Nexus 5. The colors stay crisp no matter at what angle you use the phone at. So that is definitely a huge plus for the Nexus 5. For me, it's not a big deal, as I usually just use my phone looking at it straight on, but it is a flaw that is there with the Sony Xperia Z1. When it comes to the speakers, in both cases the speaker is located on the bottom. So first up we'll have the Nexus 5. So here it is. And as you can tell, the sound is not great. And now let's have a look at the Sony Xperia Z1. And once again, it's about the same level of loudness, but whereas we can justify it in the Sony Xperia Z1, which has waterproofing membranes on its speaker, I can't really justify it in the Nexus 5. It should really have a better speaker. I mean, maybe for the price they had to make some financial cuts in some areas, and that's one area where they really did cut it short, as the speaker is pretty bad. Another thing to note is that when you play games, you're most likely gonna cover the speakers with your hands. And that's the case with any smartphone that has a speaker on the bottom. So ideal placement should be in the front, like in HTC One. Unfortunately, most phones have it on the bottom, right, as is in the case here. So do bear in mind that you're most likely going to cover the speaker when you play games. When looking at cameras, the Sony Xperia Z1 has a 20.7 megapixel shooter as compared to the 8 megapixel on the Nexus 5, which has optical image stabilization. When looking at shots taken with both phones, they look similar. On the first shot of the fruit bowl, I prefer the one taken by the Nexus 5 over the superior auto mode in Xperia Z1. In general, the superior auto mode in Xperia Z1 is backed with software. It's much better in manual mode, so if you want to take full advantage of the Xperia Z1, you have to learn how to use it properly. But just for this test, I'm just going to carry on using the superior auto mode. The next shot is in low lighting. This one is without flash, and as you can see, the Xperia Z1 picture looks a lot better and captures much more detail than the one of the Nexus 5. The Nexus 5 picture looks very blurry. The next up is a picture with flash. So as you can see here, the flash on the Nexus 5 completely destroyed the picture. The image does not look good at all, whereas the Xperia Z1 did a really good job. The next picture of a landscape, I set the Sony Xperia Z1 to the manual mode and I set it to landscape, and as you can see, the results is in favor of the Sony Xperia Z1. Both pictures are taken at 8 megapixels. In the camera on the Nexus 5, to choose some extra mode such as scene, you need to go into the little button, then click on more options, and then on the right hand side you have the scene option, and it gives you 4 different scenes that you can use. One of them is action, so that could be used for sports. The other one is night. Then we have a sunset and party option, and that is it. In conclusion, I can say that the Sony Xperia Z1's camera has a lot more features than the one on the Nexus 5. In manual mode, you get scene selection, and you can take firework mode, for example, which will increase the exposure time, which is good for pictures at night, and there's many other modes which the Nexus 5 doesn't have. So if you're looking for a superior camera, the Sony Xperia Z1 is definitely the one to get. If you want to find out more about the Sony Xperia Z1 camera, make sure you check out my detailed camera review. You can find the link in the video description. So yeah guys, this is it. That was my Sony Xperia Z1 versus the Nexus 5 comparison. The last thing you have to judge for yourself is the price. So I bought the Nexus 5 in the UK for £300, which is an equivalent of about €350 for the 16GB version. And the Sony Xperia Z1 you can purchase in Poland at the moment and around Europe for around €400. So the difference is only €50 when it comes to the European market. And for me, that is insane to even consider buying the Nexus 5, as you get so much more from the Sony Xperia Z1. When it comes to other markets like the United States, where the Xperia Z1 retails for about $600–700 and you can get the Nexus 5 for $350, I wouldn't think twice, and I would go straight for the Nexus 5. But when it comes to the European market, I see no reason why you would go for an inferior phone. Of course, there is the benefit of an always up-to-date software, but that should mainly consider developers. As for a normal end user, you just want to have a good smartphone that you can use for everything during your day, like taking pictures, and even that little thing like waterproofing on the Sony Xperia Z1 is the one feature I would actually pay extra to get. So that was it guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you've liked the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you soon.